Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another beautiful day with us, a beautiful evening. I am your host, Lloyd Strayhorn, astronumerologist Lloyd Strayhorn. You're joining us here on Live with Lloyd. As you see on the screen, I have my very distinguished guest who's coming up, a longtime friend. And so this is going to be interesting only because for many, many years he has introduced me and had me on this show as his guest. So now I get to turn the tables around and have the brother as a show, as a guest for me. All right, so let me do this. Okay. Boy, live. Okay, there we go. There we go. Let me just get this out the way a second. Okay, now we got it. There we go.
That's the beauty of being live, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Hi everybody. Welcome to another edition of Live with Lloyd. One day I'm gonna get me some moderators and stuff. My buddy Cayman Kelly, that I'm bringing on in just a minute. I've been knowing this brother for decades, literally. He's had me on his show many times. I said I'm glad to have him on mine. But before I do that, let me give you the cosmic forecast for today. And I keep forgetting, but this time I got it. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you really, really think you enjoy the show, want to share the information or subscribe so you know what's going on so you don't miss episode, please like, share, and subscribe. This is Monday, November the 14th. The sun is in Scorpio. The moon is in Leo. It's an 8 universal month of 1 universal week of 4 universal day. So those who are under the signs of Aquarius, Leo, Gemini, and Virgo, which happens to be my guest, and if they're born on the 4th, which is also the birth date of my guest, or the 5th, the 13th, the 14th, the 22nd, 23rd, or 31st of the month, this is your time. Okay, so let me get this out the way. Alrighty. And I do believe I can bring on my guest now. Hey, Cayman, how you doing, boss? How's everything?
Everything's well, man. To be here, my brother.
Now, I got a little echo, but when I clicked on I'm seeing if the feedback, whatever. Anyway, you are known. I call you Mr. Voiceover. You've done a lot of things. It's interesting here in New York City area. We have a guy with a voice similar. Is deep, baritone, and he's a Virgo just like you. He's born September the 1st. Lenny Green, are you familiar with him?
Yes, my man.
Yeah, well, y'all are both Virgos.
I know.
Well, he's born on the 1st of September. You're born on the 4th of September. So his numbers are the one.
Differ?
Huh?
How do we differ?
Well, his numbers are the 1, 4, and 5. Your numbers are the 4, 1, and 5. But the point is, he does the Quiet Storm here in New York. He's been doing it for over 18, 20 years. And you do Hot and Soul there in the D.C., Maryland area for over 18, 20 years. So I just think it's interesting that y'all are both in that. How did you get into what you do, Cayman?
But into
radio, voice, whatever.
Shoot, man, radio. It was kind of funny because when my voice started changing when I was about 12, I would always people say, man, like want to do some of the radio. And I think I started becoming interested in radio just because people would say that I sounded like. And it was so ironic. I was so focused just on music when I was younger. I was probably about 12 when my voice started changing. I had a really good friend that he raps. He used to good birds. And I taught myself how to do music. So we combined our talents and we started doing music together. And he called the radio station one day. Man, turn it on. He's about to be on the radio. So he's on there rapping about this contest that we did. And the guy who was on the mic to the radio station.
Now, for some reason, your mic is going back and forth. Even when I put mine on mute, I don't know what's happening with that.
I don't know where it's coming from. Let me see if See if I could just change my. Hang on 1 second. Let's see if it works without no.
And see, my mic has been on mute.
Is that better? I
He's
can't.
saying one day he's gonna have you all on the radio.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay. So yeah, so he called. He said, "Can you guys come to the radio station?" So my dad takes us to the radio station, and just walking around and being around it because I love music and the production guy. He said, "Man, how old are you?" And I was 15, so I was in the 10th grade at the time when I went to the station. And he said, "Man, that's crazy. You're 15 with a voice like that." And he gave me some copy to read. And when I read it, man, I fell in love with radio. And that's all I wanted to do. That's where my drive and my passion became, just being on the radio.
So where did you start? What was the first one? Because when we started meeting with each other and you started having me as a guest, what was that on WPGC?
I was on 93.9 WKYS.
Yeah, WKYS. That's exactly the first radio station I was in the DC area. Then PGC, then WOL, almost all of them at that point. You know what I'm saying? So when you do radio, for example, you've now done, as a result of this, all this radio work, you've done other voiceover stuff, haven't you?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, man. So
Such as
it's funny because look, all of that came full circle because getting on the radio as a personality was all I was focused on. And then, I was at PDC was where I started in DC. That was in, like I said, it was in 10th grade. So by the time I graduated from college, it was like starting all over again. And can you still hear me? I hear this feedback coming back.
I hear you pretty good. Let me put mine on mic. Maybe that might help. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, I was saying when I went to that radio station after college, it was kind of like getting my foot back in the door, and having those opportunities, doing things I didn't necessarily want to do in order to be seen, because I had already graduated from college, and I learned how to run the board, and then I had this intern coordinator. This one guy that he put in place, right? Because I was teaching school during the day, trying to supplement my income because I wasn't making any money. I was just kind of following that radio dream, but I had to find a way to kind of supplement because, and I talked about it in my book, how my parents used to be like, "Man, when you gonna get yourself a real job?"
Yeah, I've been there. I know what you're saying.
You got stuff to do, but it was such a passion of mine. I said, man, if I could just have the opportunity, I'll be able to turn this into something. So the irony in it all, and I skip ahead a little bit. When I met this guy named Dr. Dave, who's also a voiceover guy, and I met him when I was younger, and he would always compliment my voice. And he said, "Man, you need to be doing something with your pipes." Because Dr. Dave was always on the air. You need to do something with your pipes. And I always said, "Well, what I need to do?" Because all I thought about was being on the air, but I didn't know much about voiceover. So then here comes competition for PGC, and they started being reactionary. And they said, "Man, we want to make you the voice of PGC. Go and get some rest and come back tomorrow." So I come back and they give me this copy, but I didn't know what I was doing. So they said, "Nah, he's not quite ready yet," because I hadn't developed a skill where I could hear my voice as a voiceover artist, and I didn't know what it took. But it was so funny how it came full circle later on that I would end up doing voiceover again. So here's what happened. I fast forward a bit more. So I ended up going to BET, and they had a third-party channel called BET Uptown that was for XM satellite radio, which was a new technology at the time. So I went over there, and we had meetings with the creative service people. Always wanted to do voiceovers when I learned about it, right? Didn't know how to get started. Most of the time, nobody would ever help because it's a very competitive field. You got celebrities that do it and everything else. So nobody was willing to help. Every time I asked what I was supposed to do, he would say, "Well, you need to join up with an agency." I ain't know nothing about no agency or no unions or nothing like that. So here we are at BET. Then I started meeting all these creative service people, and they would stop past my studio. "Can you read something for us?" And I said, "Yeah." So I started reading it, and I read the first Celebration of Gospel radio spot that they ever did. I built the spot and everything because I had taught myself how to do production. So this is how this stuff came full circle because I put myself in position. to receive it. And that was my very first voiceover gig was at BET, and I became the voice of BET for about 7 or 8 years as a result of doing that one little spot, man.
But I'm saying that must be amazing because then on the Sirius XM side, you've interviewed about almost any celebrity or entertainer or in the music world that's been worth it.
Hmm.
From Natalie Cole to, uh, 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 I mean, just a whole lot. Johnny Gill, and we're talking about Jennifer Hudson or whatever the case is. I mean, it's just like, and so with that being the case, then how did you become the voiceover for? Because don't you do a voiceover for a couple of sports franchise?
Oh yeah. And shoot, man, that's another full circle story, man. Is just being in position to receive, really, because it's been a journey, And a lot of people will say, "Man, I want you to help me put my voiceover demo together so I can make some extra money." It don't work like that at all, man. As you know, I spent a lot of time in and out of New York City. Just we had to audition in person, and it was a lot, man. It was a lot to get where I am now. Nothing happens overnight, but by the time most people see it, they think it happens overnight, but nobody ever recognizes your backstory and your grind. So the way I fell into this, and that's a long story within itself. And I start with being the voice of Power 105.1 because I never thought about doing radio imaging because I was on the radio. So it wasn't anything that I was focused in on. I didn't think both could coexist. So it just so happened they were looking for a new voice of Power 105.1. And I did a demo months later before I heard anything. I had forgotten all about it. So then I did another demo to update it, and I ended up being the voice of Power 105.1 in New York City. That was my first station in the number one market,
Yeah.
and like number one market in the country. And then the snowball just kept going. It kept going. Then I became the voice of the Breakfast Club and other radio stations. I was the voice of Bounce TV, TV One. And just right when the pandemic hit, I was running this ad on one of the radio trade magazines. And I had just told my wife, I said, "Man, I'm going to take this ad down." I said, "I think I'm just wasting money because nobody ever seeing this." And right when I said it, I swear to you, like a couple of days later, I got a message through my website from the VP of ESPN named David Roberts saying he thought I would be a great voice for ESPN radio. So he and I had a conversation. It was a very brief conversation. And he said, "We'll talk on Monday." So when I spoke to him on Monday, I had a list of questions that I wanted to ask. And I said, "Do you mean, because ESPN got like 500 and some affiliates across the country." So I was asking him, was he talking about a specific market? And he said, "No, man, I'm talking about ESPN Radio National. You will be the voice." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Knowing deep down inside, I'm like, "What? Are you serious?" So
I
that
know that's
happened,
right.
so that happened. And I actually created history when we closed. I became the first African American voice of any radio sports network in America.
Really,
That was
Cayman?
history making. And
Really?
just by being in position on ESPN radio, more people heard me. Then here comes Monday Night Football. That'll be on at about 45 minutes. You'll hear my voice on the intro of Monday Night Football game. All the games, you hear my voice at the very beginning. Well, just take your mic off mute.
You're saying in about 45 minutes when the football game starts and the voice to the introduction is your voice, Cayman?
Yeah,
That's
that's me.
interesting. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And then off the back of that, I got NHL last season, so I voiced NHL stuff, the hockey games. And then
Wait a
this
minute.
season,
Now, how did they pick your voice for hockey? Because normally that's kind of like more Canadian, kind of European style things.
yeah,
How did they do that?
I don't know, man. God is good. We create
Yeah, we ain't
history
gonna
on a
mess
lot of
with the
fronts.
blessings, right?
Oh yeah, he throw them down and I'm picking them up, baby.
Well, were there any challenges along the way when you do this? So, for those who are kind of wish they could kind of get into this or break into this, I was very blessed too because I just happened to went on a radio show. The host mother called in and says, "Pablo, you should see if he can get a show." And that's how things turned out for me, because you got a lot of people that go to voiceover school, radio, TV, announcing school, and they can't seem to get the first base. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's just very, very interesting that I was blessed in what thought would be 3 months has been lasting me my whole career as a result in radio, just like you. Because you do much more also than just deal with entertainers, sportscasting, and stuff like that. But to get back full circle for those who are interested in, like, what do you do or how do you get into this or into radio, what would you tell or advise a person?
Oh man. I give that advice on numerous occasions, probably at least once a week. Um, Especially like a younger generation of people, because the grind isn't the same as it was back when, before technology advanced to where it is now. There was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, and no Twitter and all that stuff. And now you see everybody is actually on the air now. Everybody's broadcasting. They got this phone and they on the air at a restaurant. Look what I'm eating. I'm at this concert. You know what I'm saying? So there's a whole lot of ways that you can break into an industry, because we become an industry of numbers. No pun intended, because you're a numbers guy, but this is what the world has become. We're all numbers. Like, what's your following look like? So if you create an audience, people come after you now. You don't have to go to them. So people create all these podcasts. Podcasts are winning now. It's just being found because so many people are doing it. You have to find your niche. Like, look, I'm gonna focus in on this. This is what I'm gonna do. This is gonna draw my audience. And that's the advice that I give. Don't wait for somebody to come to you. Create opportunities. Don't wait for an opportunity to be given.
That makes a lot of sense, but it's interesting how you thought at one point, because just like me, I was asked, well, okay, what is this thing you're talking about and how you going to make a living? And you just don't know. You don't know, well, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. You just find your passions. And so when you find your passion, it's not a job.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So for that, if like now that, do you find a difference? Or you're still with ESPN?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And you are now with the National Football League
Yes.
and the National Hockey League.
Yes.
That's almost like a trifecta. All you got to do is do it the NBA League.
Well, I'm doing NBA.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I just started this season.
Wait a minute. You do the voiceovers for NBA, NFL, and National Hockey League? You do all of them?
Yeah. I just do Monday Night Football for the NFL. Not just, like, it's not a big deal, but
No. Anytime you do voices, because then you do down even voices for, I think at one time for McDonald's or whatever. You've been doing a lot of this.
Yeah. I've done McDonald's, man. I've done so many. I couldn't even sit here and run them down. I forget about stuff. I do a lot of concerts. Man, I did a Franklin tour. Some of them I'm like really excited about. I did Stevie Wonder. I'm Stevie Wonder. Man.
Well, he's a four like you, so I would figure that. Okay, that would make sense.
I love that. Never met him. But just
Really?
for him to never met him, man. And just for him to pick me out to Voices tour, I was over the moon.
That's nice. That's nice. Well, he's a Earth sign with an air number just like you. He's a May 13th, but he's a four person, which I think is interesting. If there's is there something that is very challenging, like reading copy, or do they then let you do the copy itself? I would imagine they have their own writing team, and you just come in, you just read the copy. I take it.
Yeah, I just read it. So the biggest thing with reading copies is to make it sound like you're not reading copy. It's
That makes sense.
bringing the words to light. You have to be able to interpret what you're reading and say, this sounds like it should sound like this. Because the reality is somebody gives you directions. The way you perceive them can be totally different in your mind than what they're thinking. You know what I'm saying? So if they say we want epic, we want big, it's kind of like, and I'll give this example. So if you walk in a classroom, you got 20 people in there, and you say, what does pop mean to you? Some people would say, oh, it's a sound. Other people may say it's a soda. People may say it's a song. So it boils down to the perception of the way that you think things should go. Nobody can ever think what you're thinking. It's impossible. So when you look at words on a page, you have to make these words come to life. It's an interpretation. Like, where do I add the inflection to each word to make it stand out? Should I inflect this word, or should I inflect this word? Or maybe I'll go back and do different takes on it all. So it really kind of depends. But some people are trust me just to do it myself because they trust my expertise. So they just send a copy, I'll voice it and send it back. Or sometimes I do sessions, like they want to coach. Like, I got a piece tomorrow that I do in the morning for the NBA, and it's a session. So they'll set up the session and they'll listen in. So they'll say, oh, I love that. Just do it this way. Try it this way this time. So they kind of coach the session like that. You gotta unmute your mic.
Thank
Unmute
you.
your
I've
mic,
been
my
knowing for
brother.
I've been knowing for the longest. You've always been doing radio because you would have me on ever since I was down there, and so we must be knowing each other. It's got to be over 20 something, 30 years practically, right?
Well, I'm not that old, so I don't know what you're talking about. It's just your perception, boy. Yeah, it has been a while.
I know it's been a minute. I know it's been a minute.
Because I mean, you figure when I first met you, I didn't have a wife. I didn't have kids. My oldest kid will be 19 in February. I've been married for 20.
And I've been knowing you before you were married.
That's what I'm saying. It's been a long time.
Yeah, but the one thing we've always had in common is radio, and it is a wonderful medium. It can be a blessing and a challenge. And since in doing this, do you have, speaking of that, have you had any challenges where you question anything you've done so far, or any like, I don't know, I'm not sure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, man. I still deal with that, because I'm of the belief that I don't think we ever really arrive. And most people start getting into a space where they start to self sabotage themselves. And what I mean by that is sometimes we second guess our abilities. And I still do it, even at the level that I'm at. When I get something new, like for instance, when I got NHL last year, the first time I heard from them was when they sent me my first set of scripts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how am I supposed, there was no direction. So I did it like I thought it should be done, but I had anxiety about it. Like all night I couldn't sleep because I was hoping it was good enough. And sometimes if I do an audition, I'd be like, dang, and I booked the gig, and I'm like, oh my God, I hope I'm good enough. Like I hope my true colors don't come out. They don't really like me or something. So like I had those moments.
Yeah.
But the biggest moment that I had was when I first got into radio. I thought I made a mistake because
How so?
he because my first gig, being in a top 10 market, man, I only made $6 an hour. And it was 4 hours a day. That's what made me write this book right here, man. This is my whole truth.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that book.
Yeah.
Now I see the title, "The $6 million Turned into $1 million Dream." Now I see where the six comes from.
Yeah, $6. That was like my real truth. $6 an hour is where I started. And they didn't pay me for a whole day. It was $6 an hour for 4 hours a day, even though I worked all day. And there was some hiccups in there because I didn't know how the game was played. And I remember I used to tell my father, man, I think I picked the wrong thing to do. I don't think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So, when you had those moments, but when I look back, I learned the most during those days because of that struggle. And I just talked to my first PD the other day. He said something to me during a review one time. He was listening to my air check. He said, man, you're a great guy. Everybody around here loves you. He said, but your follow-up is weak. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, you've been working overnights, because I had started doing 2 to 6 in the morning. I would work promotions all day and do 2 to 6 in the morning, overnight shift. Be tired, man. I used to drive home seeing stuff in the middle of the highway that wasn't there.
Yeah, understood.
God, I could kill myself, man. I was so tired. But what he said was, he said, everybody loves you, but your follow up is weak. I said, what do you mean? And he said, you've been doing this overnight position for a couple months now, and never once have you come to me and pitched to me that you wanted to position full time. And see, my thought process was, if I do a good job, maybe they'll come to me and say, you're doing such a great job, we want to offer this to you. He said, no, it doesn't work like that. If you don't speak up for yourself, we'll roll right over you. And man, I took those words and I live by that to this day, because that's the reality. Nobody knows what's going on up here but you. If you're not pleased with something, you have to open your mouth and communicate that. Otherwise, people think you're accepting the way that you're living. Nobody's going to improve your abilities. You know what I mean? If you don't say anything, if I'm paying you $6 an hour and you never say, man, I think I deserve a raise, well, I'm gonna give you something. Lori happy. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to
That's
go out of
true.
my way to hand you something.
Yeah, not the way this world works. No, it
No,
doesn't really
no.
work like that.
That's why anytime, I'm gonna tell you, man, anytime the bank or somebody calls me and they trying to save me, we can save you money on that mortgage payment. But why are you doing me a favor? You in this to make money. You're not doing me a favor. So somewhere in there is going to benefit you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's just finding where the benefit is on their part.
Right.
But it's just very interesting though. So now, so that means you still put in a lot of hours because you still do your Heart and Soul on channel 48 on Sirius XM.
Yeah. Yeah.
What time does that come on?
I do noon to 6 every day, Monday through Friday. I was doing Monday through Saturday until I went to the hospital early this year. And I'm
So you
telling
do,
you,
so you do Monday through Friday,
yeah,
and from what 2 to 6?
12 to 6.
12 to 6. Okay. Now I've caught your segments on Instagram, and you've always had these artists. Do you know in your mind how many artists you probably interviewed? I mean, it's like endless. I mean, it's like you must have lost count with that too.
Yeah, I don't have the slightest idea, man. But if you see some of the pictures that's hanging behind me, and some of these that's on the side over here, these are all interviews that I did in the studio. You see Avante, Joe, Hank, Johnny, Bobby. Who was that? Jennifer Hudson, Kim, Charlie Wilson, Patty LaBelle. Love me some Patty. That's all I could see. And then I had India, Kirk Franklin's on here, Anderson Paak, Brian McKnight, Will Downer, Shantae Moore, Common, Ronnie Bobby, and Mike Blanc, Stokely, Raphael Sadiq, Eli Moore, After Seven, Eric Wayne Brady, etc., in the Cashmere Sweater. It's been a lot, man. It's been a lot over the years. Janet Jackson, Jamie Foxx.
Of the numerous people that you had got to interview, was there one that, if you could do it continuously, and is so, is there one where that person would only come through every now and then? For me, one of mine, or in dealing with hearing your show, is when you interviewed Howard Hewitt. That was one of the funniest. I mean, you got tons of them, but that one to me was a standout.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that all the time.
Yeah, but is there any one that you've been saying like, "Wow, this is like pulling teeth"? You know how sometimes you have a guest on, and then they don't say anything, and you got to fish for questions or fish search for something, and then there's some people you can just like turn on the mic and they just go to it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think I ever had one of those. One of those moments when somebody didn't really talk and it made it more difficult for me. I don't think I had one of those moments, Lord.
Well,
All of
who's the
them
most
is good.
talkative?
Huh?
I'm sure on the reverse side of the scale, there must have been somebody as soon as you open up and they started, you couldn't get a word in edgewise. Would there be one of
Oh
those?
man, that was Tyrese.
Tyrese, really?
Man, brother, I told that joke. I should have stayed at home. You could have done this by yourself. He was on a roll that day, boy. I couldn't hardly get a word in. I'm gonna tell you another time. They had called me to do a town hall with Kirk Franklin. Now a town hall is like all talk for about an hour. And another time when I almost self-sabotaged myself, I was like, man, I can't talk that long. I can't talk for no hour. And I said, well, I'm gonna be on vacation, because when we self-sabotage ourselves, we find other things that we have to do. So I was actually gonna be on vacation. And I said, I'll just be getting back in town. I said, so I tell you what, if you can't find somebody, then call me as a last resort. And of course they called me. And I was like, oh man, I ain't gonna be able to do it because it pushed me out of my comfort zone. Because you gotta figure like most interviews that I do, they're broken up. So if I talk and then we go to a song, like the artist performs, so that gives me a chance to reset. Then we come back, we talk some more. And plus, like I'm interacting with an audience. That's how I draw people in because I'm an introvert by nature. Nobody believes it, but I'm quiet and I don't like small groups of people because it's very intimidating to me. So I learned how to use my humor to overcome the intimacy. So once I start making people laugh, they'll lighten up, and there's always at least one person that's in the crowd that you feel more comfortable like looking at because they acting crazy or whatever it is. You like such and such. I can talk about such and such right
You got
there.
the connection.
Yeah, you get a connection from them. So anyway, I end up doing this town hall with Kirk Franklin. Man, I put so much prep. I mean, usually I don't prep for a lot of interviews because I just want to have a conversation and be organic. So just because this is so different, I spent all this time prep, writing on note cards and all kind of stuff. And I get to the studio, Kirk Franklin sits on the back of the chair. He's small. So he sits on the back of the chair. I
Yeah,
said,
I
oh,
met
this is
him.
going to be good. I could just already tell there was going to I never used the notes that I had because he was just that talkative. I shoot out one thing and he rolled with it. That show ended up being 2 hours long because it was so much meat in it. And that's my thing. I'm saying if we record and let's just go, we can always cut it down later. And I'm all about organic because you never know what you're going to capture. So we had this moment when we got to the end because I had all of this stuff that I had read. And when you write stuff, for some reason, it stays here better. So when I asked him about his father at the very end, I said, man, we had a great conversation. I hate to end on a dark note, but I said, let's talk about, the time when you met your father because he spent all of his life not knowing his father. And somebody called him and told him that his pops was sick. He was about to die. He was terminally ill. So he said, he's meant when he went like this, Lord, he paused like this. He said, man, I hated that dude. I hated him. He
Really?
said, I know people gonna say Kirk Franklin said he hate. Yeah, I'm human. He said, I hated that dude. He said, so, I'm sitting there battling back and forth, like, do I go see him? And then he said he got in the car and he drove to see him. He said, man, I went into the hood. He was in a 1-bedroom apartment, barely no furniture. He said he remember looking around like, dang, my pops get ready to go out like this. And he said, and I was honest with him. This is the moment that we have. And I'm like, oh my God, this is heavy. We done laughed for 2 hours and we get here and it gets dark. So he said, I told him, I said, listen, he said, man, I'm quite sure you know what I've accomplished as a man. I've sold records. I made a little bit of change. He said, but I'm still the most insecure man in the world. I'm the one in the room that's the most insecure. He said, because I didn't have a man to look up to. He said, so as a result of it, I smoked weed or I was a womanizer, like all of these things that he was spilling out. And he said, I said, what did he say to you? And he said, man, maybe I watched too much TV. He said, but I thought we was going to press foreheads. We was going to cry and share a moment. We was just going to spend the rest of our days, on happy terms, like building a relationship that we never had. And that's what did he say? He said, I see how you could say that and feel that way. And he said, and then when I started to think about it, I realized that he didn't have the capacity to give me what I wanted. He said, if you look at me, you could teach me all day long how to dunk a basketball. I still don't have the capacity to carry that out. And I said, wow.
So it was like this moment, and I was able to bring it back out. These are the skills that I developed over the years, as a communicator, because you have to be able to listen as an interviewer. You listen to people, and most of the time when they give an answer, you can come back off of that because there's something in there. So I said, let me say this to you, man. He said, I'm listening. And I said, you had a decision to make. You have choices in life. And he could have easily, by the way that he was raised and all that he went through as a child, he could have easily taken another path and created a generational curse. And I said, but you got a wife on the other side of the glass. You got kids that care about you. They love you and respect you as a father. You changed a generational curse. And I said, and if you had gone down the other path, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation right now. I said, look at it, man. You got people that buy tickets to come see your show. As a musician, you don't even sing. You know what I'm saying? And he said, man, I can respect that. He said, God bless you. So, it took it out and it put things in perspective. A lot of times we may not see it, but, the blessing is all in there, from what he went through, because you went through what you went through. Now your life has been so transparent that it can bless so many other people as a result of it. Now we don't have to go down the same path. What's your next question? 'Cause I could talk all night. Take your
Because
mic off.
see, these are some of the behind the scenes things that people don't know, but gives nuance to some of the things that we walk away with, memories that people tell us. You know what I'm saying? Like when
Mm-hmm.
Luther Ingram was in WBLS studios in New York, and we were talking. We would find out we were both born on the same day. I had a company at that time called Yama. He had a company called Yama. I mean, it was one of the most eeriest kind of things. And then there's others, when you meet people, and some of the nicest people I met is like Jamie Foxx, believe it or not,
Yeah.
LL Cool J, Barry White, especially. He was into numerology big time. So these are things that we got to go on. So we could write a book. They would probably be very fascinating.
Oh yeah.
So what happens when it does that when people kind of open up themselves to you? I think that's interesting too. Just like what you just happen to have, like having a 2 hour conversation with Kirk Franklin, and then you get to the part where you hit something that really touched a nerve. And I think that's interesting about the father, because a lot of times, like with Shaquille O'Neal, uh, uh, my man Mike Tyson, the fathers always want to come back when they are at a point, when they're at the lowest point in their life, and then want to become fathers. And then the sons are not as receptive. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? So that must give some pause to some people.
Oh yeah.
So now, what about women that you've ever talked to that kind of open up and express some of the things they went through, not to put all their business in the street?
Oh shoot, it's been a lot, man. Because I think the whole goal when I interview somebody is because we have a tendency to hold celebrities on such a pedestal that it's almost like they're not human anymore. So I think my whole goal is to humanize a celebrity and have people walking away like, oh my God, I never knew that about them. Because there's certain aspects that, because like they don't have family anymore. Like, no, you ain't his cousin, like we just eliminate everything about this person that doesn't, they're not human anymore. So that's the whole goal with me, is trying to find something like Raphael Sadiq and I had a conversation one day. I know you asked about women, but when you listen to his music all these years with Tony, and him as a solo artist, and just by talking to him, man, I learned so much about that dude, man. He almost had me in tears. He had 13 siblings, and he experienced so much. One of his brothers killed himself because he couldn't kick his addiction. There's another one that he got killed. One of his sisters got hit backing out of her driveway. She got caught in a high-speed chase and she got killed. So he said he just started experiencing death when he was about 7 years old. He went to his first funeral with his older brother. So his last project was about addiction, Jimmy Lee. And I was asking him how he was able to keep his music more so on the bright side than to deal with all the negativity that he had been through all of those years, man.
Sure,
And
sure.
just seeing and talking about things like that. I'm trying to think like female, like Jennifer Hudson, when I was talking to her, and I said, what do you miss the most that you gave up? Because it's a heavy price tag to become a celebrity. You got to sacrifice a lot. And she said, man, I miss going to Walmart, just walking around in Walmart, and buying my own underwear and not having to send somebody to buy my underwear. So just having conversations. She said she wears her high school ring on her finger just to remind her that she is who she is. Because you can lose yourself, man. It's a heavy price.
I think people we on the outside looking in, so to speak, think that their things are an idyllic world, but sometimes they got more challenges. At least you and I can go to a store without being mobbed or
Yeah.
interrupted, whereas versus like a Jay Z or Beyonce, not unless they have to go in disguise and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
there's that personal touch you lose, man. It's kind of like incredible when you do that, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
some of them, like when I would come in, sometimes I would be picked up in a limousine and I would talk to the drivers about some of the people they met. And they would tell me how, like, some of them are like just like kids, man. You know, just in terms of how they do things. You would think that with them being personalities, they would act like adults.
Hmm.
But a lot of them, when they're going and traveling and tours and stuff like that, they're the most childish of people that you can think of in some cases, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, shoot, man, all the demand, and then you listen to some of the songs, and it just spills it out in the music. If you think about Phyllis Hyman, she was pouring her feelings into her music. Those was real feelings that she had, and nobody ever. We just look at the music, but we don't feel the pain that's in the music. Music is very interpretive, and it's a powerful force. So you look at her, you look at somebody like a Mary J. Blige that did her My Life album. She talked about the addiction to drugs and alcohol, the abusive relationships. All of those subject matters were in those songs. And for those artists to be so transparent with their lives, and they're giving us an art, but it's also like a therapy for them at the same time, which in turn can be a therapy for us that we connect with songs like that. So could you imagine the world with no music in it?
It would be boring.
Oh my gosh, man.
And there's something about music, you can hear a song and it will give you an instant flashback to 5 years ago, 10
Come
years
on,
ago,
man.
ageless years ago, what you were doing, what you shouldn't have been doing. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
You remember
But
what you were wearing. Come on, man.
oh yeah,
Outfits.
yeah, who you were dating or whatever the case is. Let me ask you this though: music seemed to have changed so much since the '80s up until about maybe the early '90s. Then it went west. There used to be love songs. Of course, there would be songs about my man or something of that nature. But there would always be a bringing together of a relationship or desire for it. Today's music seems to be so different, or is that me, Cayman?
Well, I think what it is, and it does shift. A lot of things change. There's nothing new that's been created under the sun. Because you go back and listen to some of the stuff from back in the day, they had the same subject matters, but it was the way that they delivered. And and the reality is, Lloyd, everybody has their own set of good old days. You know what I mean? So music takes you back to the place where you remember that were good for you. So if you grew up during the 60s movement, that music is what you can identify with. My favorite personal era of music was the 90s, because that's the time when I came up. That's when I was in my teenage years, was in the 90s. So I identify with that type of music. That's my good old days. So, the stuff that I hear now, and you think about it, man, it keeps going over. So when your parents were raising you and you had your music, like that ain't no, you don't know nothing about no music. And we get older, we say the same things. Man, what is that y'all listening to? What is that? You know what I'm
And you
saying?
know,
It
that's what
sounds
Howard
probably
Hewitt
slower
said
as
to
you get
his.
older.
That's what Howard Hewitt said to his son in the interview when he says, "Well, don't you need to warm up your vocal cords?" He says, "Well, when I sing my first track, my first song, that's when I'm warming up." You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It's a totally different thing. So, what does that mean? Like you have kids. What do you think their music will be when they come of age?
Oh gosh, man. It'll be what they're listening to now. You know what's funny? My daughter, like her music taste is all over the place. So sometimes we in the car, she said, "Can I play my music?" And I said, "Sure, let's play it." And she listens to old music, and she said, "Do you know such and such?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know who that. I don't know who that is." But it'd be like some of the best stuff, and then like if we know the same artist, and it connects us like that. You know, she's a teenager. I'm 50 years old. So she said, "Do you know the internet?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know the internet. I be playing them on my radio show." And it's so funny how music can bridge like so many different generations. Like there'll never be a gap when music is involved. When we, because most of the time, and my sons and I were talking about this the other day, because he said, "What's your favorite song growing up?" And I said, it was Enjoy Yourself by the Jackson Five. And they said, "It was?" And I said, "Yeah." And then it was Isn't She Lovely by Stevie Wonder. Song came out in the 70s. I forget what year it came out exactly. And they said, "But you were such and such years old." And I said, "Yeah, but you tend to listen to the music that your parents listened to. You listen to what was in the house that becomes your favorites." Because sometimes I'm like, "How I know that song?" And that song was out before I was born. 'Cause my father was like a big Otis Redding dude. He loved Otis Redding, man. I know all the Otis Redding songs. So, we get introduced to things like that our
It
parents grew
always
up with.
starts in the household. I remember I had to go get
Absolutely.
some records for my mother. Junior, go to the store and get this record or whatever the case is. It's like, and that's how we remember some of the records that before our time, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I just think it's amazing. But let me say this, because time is getting by. I want to talk about your book a second. I want to get people now. Talk about your book, From $6 an Hour to $1 Million Dream. Now, you did give us a clue that when you first started, all they paid you was $6 an hour.
Hmm.
And so then to $1 Million Dream, what do you feel is your $1 Million Dream? Doing what you do now?
Doing what I do
Doing what
now.
I do now.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So,
So
and this book
this
really
book really
touches on
touches on
the
the
struggle. And if you
struggle,
read
and if you
the
read
sub
the
of it, the
sub of it,
process
the
isn't easy,
process
but
isn't
your
easy, but
decisions
your
determine
decisions
your
determine your
outcome.
outcome.
And some of
And
those
some of
days was
those
really
days were
hard for
really
me.
hard.
And even when I said, "Listen, man," I said, "Dad, I chose the wrong thing to do." My dad told me one day, he said, "Son," he said, "one day you're going to look back at this stuff and you're going to laugh." And I said, "Well, I'll be glad when it get funny, because it sure ain't funny right now." Because I swear to you, man, I remember days, and thank God gas wasn't as expensive as it is now, but
Now, but
like I had to
I
get
had to get
change out of
change
the
out of it.
ashtray to give me a couple gallons to get to work with, like, in the struggle creates so much strength. And I always say that, like when you have to struggle, because I looked at one of my roommates, and I wrote about him in the book, because man, that dude was so inspirational to me, because I used to watch how he moved. He grew up in the hood. I didn't grow up in the hood. And plus, I didn't have to take out loans to go to school because my parents paid for it. So I didn't know what the struggle was like. So when I dropped him off at home one day, he was like, "Man, I ain't coming back here, Cayman. I ain't coming back here no more." His drive was like, oh my, and he studied. And because I saw him study, I would start studying because I felt guilty for just laying around. So that's how his motivation rubbed off on me, and it gave me drive, just being around him, because he had so much more determination to change his circumstance, and I didn't, because things were handed to me. So I didn't respect it as much. So that's basically what this book is about, because I struggled with that $6 an hour. That wasn't no money for you to pay nobody. You could have paid me out your pocket. Like, why I gotta pay taxes on $6? Are you
Are you
kidding me?
kidding me? Yeah, are you serious? That's exactly right. But to do it though, but it shows you what the difference is when you are passionate about doing something. Obviously, it wasn't the money,
Hmm.
and this is what I try to tell people sometime. When you want to find your passions, you make a wish list of all the things you want to do, but don't tell your friends, because they'll say you can't do this and you shouldn't do that and you're being silly. You don't want
Yep.
nobody to interrupt. Then the second list is you narrow it down to people, to those things you like to do that can maybe pay your bills. The
Yeah.
third list, which is the most important list, is that if you had to do these things and they wouldn't, and you did not get paid, what would it you love to do? And when you find that, you found your passion. So
Oh
people
yeah.
have
Oh
asked
yeah.
me, "Well, Lloyd, you got a job?" No, no, this is not a job for me. This is what I love to do. You know what I'm saying? And so all of us can do it. And there are times when I thought I'd made some very serious mistakes about the decisions moving forward. But fortunately, because I was so passionate, then it turned itself around, and it always will do that, because that's what my father says. Well, you want to do this? How you going to feed your family? He asked me a question that realistically I had no answer to, but I knew I loved this, and so I try to get people to say if. But see, most people I think they're in for an easy ride. Well, I'll get this, and things are going to be handed to me. But the Creator has ways of testing your faith about anything you choose to do when you go off the beaten path. They really do, because everybody can do that. So I just think it's interesting. So now your book, it is available on Amazon. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes. Yes.
Good, good. So you're gonna come out with another book.
Possibly at some
Possibly at
point.
some point. I was only saying. I was just seeing what you was gonna say.
I mean,
I
shoot,
mean,
anything is
anything's
possible, man.
possible, man.
I don't put anything by the wayside anymore. Because this, it was just something that I wanted to do for a while, and I did it, because early on, man, I was a quitter at a lot of things. Because stuff
Really,
didn't feel
you,
right. I
Cayman?
ain't doing this no more. 'Cause, it's the easy way out. And this is something that I said, man, I gotta do it. So, to see it actually come together, because and you and I had these conversations before. So at this age, man, I'm thinking about is legacy. And what can I leave behind when I'm gone? Does my name have any weight to it? Because I got kids, and that's the things that I'm concerned about. I have a wife, and really I want my name to live on long after my physical existence. And a friend of mine told me about this psychoanalyst. His name was Eric Erickson, and he coined this term generativity. And what that means is that when you get to your middle age, like 47, about around 46, 47 and above, what you start to think about is a mind shift, and you start to think about the generation that's coming behind you, and how can you put them in position. And that's where my head is. And like when I got sick earlier this year in January, when I had the stroke, and I'm laying there in the hospital with nothing to do, I started thinking about stuff like this, and it made me realize how fragile life is. Because we see things happen to other people around us, but we don't ever really think it's going to happen to us. So it made me focus and put life into perspective, because now my time has been threatened. And I just made it to 50 in September. And I was like, damn, I ain't even 50 years old yet. And my time has been threatened already. So it just goes to show us that, life isn't necessarily what we think it's supposed to be. It doesn't necessarily pan out like we want it to, because there's some things and aspects of it that we don't actually control.
Nor
So
are we
I
guaranteed a long
laid
life.
there. What'd you say, bro?
Nor are we guaranteed a long life.
No, not at all. And so and to that point, the way that we've been taught and the way that we've been trained, you have people that work a job for years and years and years. They put their money away in hopes to retire. What if they don't make it to retirement, but they never really enjoyed their lives? You see what I'm saying? So there, I think there's a fine line. I think we should really enjoy. We start to enjoy our lives and live. If we work hard, we should play hard. Because the fact is, you don't spend your money, somebody else will. When you die, I mean, come on, they'll blow through that thing in a matter of minutes, man. Come on, let's be real. And
No
we never got
question.
that's a hell of a sacrifice to pay for you to die for somebody else to live good. Are you kidding?
Yeah, you might as well live as best you can, because you only go this way once. This is
One
not
time.
like the video games that we play in the mornings or the afternoon or the evening. When you get zapped, that's a wrap. Okay, no question. There's no like, excuse me, could I do this over again? That's it. So
That's
it is
it.
about making the best of what we do have. But I think that's nice, though. So, Cayman, now, let me get this straight again. You do voiceovers now for ESPN, PN?
Hmm.
Okay, good. And you now do the voice in the morning for the National Football League?
Monday night football.
Night Football. You also do the National Basketball League?
Yes.
And you now do the National Hockey League.
Yes.
Is there any other league?
Well, there's Major League Baseball I have attached.
Okay. So, okay. So when that is, we'll bring you back to tell me how you feel about that. You know.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, man. I enjoy this, man. Sometimes it's just so surreal, Lloyd. To sit back and be like, dang, I get paid for what people used to tease me about. People teased me when my voice got deep. What's up, Lurch? I used to say all that kind of stuff, man. And I actually get paid. And it's so surreal, the money that you can get paid to talk every day.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to get checks in the mail from voiceover stuff, and voiceovers are very popular too. You
Yeah,
know,
it is.
and especially if you have the right voice for radio or the media of any kind. But nowadays, they'll take voices of almost any subject: squeaky voices, baritone,
Yeah.
velvety voices, whatever the case is. But I just, again, in closing, I just thought it's so interesting that both people I know and admire for years, because I've been knowing Lenny Green for over about 20 something years too. And he
Mm-hmm.
does the Quiet Storm here in New York, and you do the Heart and Soul there, which is equivalent to um, a Quiet Storm. Because didn't they have a Quiet Storm there in, what was it, WKYS or PGC at one point?
Yeah, I used to do, well, it was a quiet storm, but it was called the Red Light Special. That was a show that I did on KYS when you and I first met years ago. That was my slow jam show. Now Heart and Soul is kind of, we do up tempos and stuff, because I'm on during the day, and it's nationwide, so it's all across the nation and beyond.
Well, I tell you this, I couldn't be more happier for you uh, than Cayman. And I value our friendship. We have known each other for decades. It's always been nice. And the nice thing of coming up in our background of how we were raised is you got to be nice to people, and it don't cost a penny. And you never know how the blessings go. How the blessings go, man. And it
Yeah,
don't cost nothing to be nice. It don't cost nothing. I ain't got to reach in the pocket, pull out no money, not a coin, to just show you respect from one human being to another. So our
absolutely.
relationship, you've always come through for me. You've had me on your shows, and I just says, okay, now that I got mine, let me bring you on, okay?
Yes, sir.
And so it was really really nice. So I want to thank you. And by the way, this is everybody. Let me do this. This is how you get in touch with Cayman Kelly. He is a radio personality and a voiceover artist. And his website is caymankelly.com. His IG Instagram is at Cayman Kelly, and he is on Sirius XM Monday through Saturday, 12 to 6. Is that correct, buddy?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that's on channel 48. Okay, so that's it. Any closing words you want to say, partner, before you get off? I want to thank you very much for this.
No, just thanks to everybody who joined. I was just scrolling through the comments. I missed these
You was what
earlier,
happening?
so
Yeah, the
hello to
comments.
everybody.
Yeah, so yeah, the comments. I'm trying to, I'm trying to multitask here. So sometimes when I gotta things like this, I focus, and then I've got one of your good friends and one of my clients too, Will Roundtree, is going to be on this Wednesday, and I call him. He's a wealth builder.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how small the world is. I didn't know you knew him, and I didn't know he knew me. You know what I'm saying? And so it just goes to show you, like our mother say, you can't talk bad about people. You don't know who knows who. You know what I'm saying? But
Sure.
but Will be on this Wednesday, the 16th. He is a CEO. He's written books also. He is very serious about wealth building. And Cayman, thank you very, very much, man. I really, really enjoyed this, okay?
Yeah, thank you, my brother. My pleasure.
Yeah. So anytime, especially when you get to the National Basketball League, National Baseball League, you let me know. You'll be back, and then that way you'll have a lock. Is there one person that you know of this out of these major sports franchises got at least three like you?
I don't know, man. I can't really say. I have no idea.
Okay. But I think
Probably.
you think
I'm
so?
quite sure it's happened before.
Yeah, but I think this is nice that the ESPN, uh, National Basketball League, National Football League, National Hockey League, under any circumstances, I would say not bad, buddy. Keeps you busy. At least it gives you something to do, as they
Yes,
say.
sir.
You
Absolutely.
know.
He's trying to find something to do.
So in the meantime, thank you so much, man. You take good care, Cayman. All
You
righty.
as well, my brother. Thank you again.
Okay. All right, everybody. So I want to thank you. I want to thank Cayman too. Again, it'll be Wednesday, and I'm going to have my very distinguished guest, uh, excuse me, Will Roundtree. And he has a book out called CEO, Full Time CEO, and a couple other things like that too. So, and don't forget, please sign up for my free monthly newsletter in November. And there are going to be a couple other surprises coming out soon. But everybody, I want to thank you very, very much. All of you have a very nice day, and I will see you on Wednesday.